Hello. Daughenbaugh Allen, also born and raised here in the valley, and then my granddaughter, her daughter, Leah Allen, and again born and so far raised here in the valley. In the back is my husband, Doc. He's and you'll get to hear more about him throughout the time that we're speaking. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to start with some of the history of how the ranch developed, and then Adonna will talk about the current status of the ranch, and then Leah is going to bring it in with a final on what the future of the ranch might be. Kind of an unusual perspective to have 3 generations of women, for one thing, being able to talk about this at the same time. While we're talking, we are going to send things around so you don't have to be bored and look at us. Just feel free to thumb through things and pass it around, because there are a lot of pictures, there are a lot of things that won't mean anything to you, but they might give you that opportunity to ask a question toward the end when we get done. We're going to leave plenty of time for questions. So it's good to see some good, friendly faces here. How many of you have actually been on our ranch? Quite a few, either through workshops or tours or church picnics or the 4th of July or just being our friends. And so we're glad that those of you that have been there are coming back to hear us, because now you know all of our faults as well. So, I will start with a thank you to Katie, of course, for putting all this together. And just a little bit of side history. One of my classmates, Deborah Bristol Powell, is sitting back here, and her sister, Katie's mom, Pat, and Debbie and I all graduated in the same class in 1971. So it's so wonderful to have you as part of this whole scheme of things now. Okay, my family first came into the Yampa Valley in 1937, and this was my grandfather on my mother's side, Richard and Gladys Payne, and they came here from the Sandhills of Nebraska because he saw a newspaper article talking about there being work in the Yampa Valley. He was a carpenter at that time, and all of a sudden he thought, well, I'm starving to death out in the eastern side of Nebraska thanks to the Dust Bowl, but there's work in the Yampa Valley. And so he came in 37, and they immediately started constructing different buildings here in town. For some of you that know the region, he was instrumental in building the old Harbor Hotel that came down about 6 years ago. He also helped build additions to the Methodist Church, and he also did a revision for the top of Hans Peak, the little cabin that is up there and has since been redone. But they took mules up there at that time to take the supplies up. So there's a number of homes that he built around town, and he brought his wife, Gladys, and his 2 daughters, Alice, who was my mother, and her sister, Jean. And while they were building their house here, which is up on Pine Street, they were living in the Cabin Hotel, and it burned to the ground while they were living in it.
We'll pass these around too, and you guys can all, just since Doc's in the back, if you can just hang on to these, that'd be
great. So that was that side of the family, and they stayed here through the middle 40s. When my grandmother died, she hated Steamboat with a passion, did not want to be buried here, and so he put her on a train, her casket on a train, and sent her back to Nebraska. They held 2 services, one at the Methodist Church here and another one there in Nebraska, where she is subsequently buried. And then later in the 60s, he moved to Denver, again kind of following work and retirement. My dad's family came here in 39, and they were dirt farmers out in Gothenburg, Nebraska, literally starving to death out there because of the Depression and the Dust Bowl. And my grandfather had come out with some friends to hunt and thought, well, at least if nothing else, I can feed my family here. And so they moved here in 1939, following a little farm sale of their property in Nebraska. But my dad's kind of claim to fame was that he drove an open-air tractor pulling a trailer of farm equipment from Gothenburg, Nebraska to Steamboat.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And one of the things that happened along this trip was that he, out of the corner of his eye, all of you know on I-80 where the Lincoln Monument is? He was about in that area, and he could hear this sound. He caught something out of the corner of his eye, saw it go winging across, and then he heard a tractor tire start to disintegrate. And he had lost the valve stem out of that tractor. And so for about 2.5, 3 hours, he crawled on his hands and knees to find that, because he didn't have the repair pieces for it, and there weren't that many cars going by at that time. And then his brother was also driving an open air tractor with a trailer, and the two of them pumped that tire back up and got it going again and continued their trek. That was the middle of September when they made their first trip out here, and then November 1st is when the entire family moved here. They moved on to the mesa west of town where Ray Selby now lives. And also Steve lives out in that area as well. And the first winter, they got here the first part of November, and they were about froze to death. They were living in what was a nice little cabin, but there were 6 kids, my grandparents, and they weren't prepared very much for the type of winter that they were now being faced to do. My grandmother said, who had not seen this place when they got here, said that when she dropped over the pass and looked down in this valley, she thought she died and gone to heaven because it was so beautiful and such a wonderful place to be. But by February, she thought she died and gone to a But my dad said they never ever regretted being here. That because it was that little slice of heaven, they began to love it, and they started working on that. In 1946, my dad was able to buy, along with his his stepdad and a brother, buy the place that we now call home. It's depending on how long you've been here, we used to be about 12 miles from town. We're now about 8. But it's on the lower Elk River, and that is where we all still call home. And if you wouldn't mind passing one of those, the 1956 picture around, and then subsequently the other one, the one that Adonna first had, 1956, and you can see that much of the ranch, the homestead has stayed the same, although the buildings start to change, and this is 10 years old, but it still we're still making a lot of changes and adjustments out there as well. When my dad first got there, all the buildings were log, and they were old. There was an old 2-story house, there was a barn, there were shops, everything was pretty old and falling down. And so through the years, he started building, and you can see the difference. Anything that's white in the smaller picture are the ones that he brought onto the place or built himself. When Mount Harris went under, they sold all those buildings, and my dad went down with tractor and trailer and brought a lot of those buildings there and put it on our place. And I always joke that he kind of collected buildings like most people collected stamps, because we have a lot of buildings around our place that he chose to paint white. That's how he wanted to maintain things. And as he found a little bit of money, he just kept adding on to what he needed as far as barns and sheds and that kind of thing. The water rights on our place are very good. They date back to the late 1800s. We've always had plenty of water, and then we also have a total of 4 wells on our place now. We have subsequently added a place for Adonna and Troy and Leah and Levi to live right across the road. And Adonna and Troy now own the ranch. And then our son and his wife live in a house that Doc and I built when we first got married, all still on the ranch. So we are some of the fortunate people that have our kids and our grandkids around. Good and bad, I guess, so be it. Raymond and Alice had a pretty universal type operation. Definitely cows and pigs, horses. He always farmed, well, not always. He fed with team and horse as long as he was capable, which put him clear into the 80s. 1980s, he was still feeding with a team and sled. When Troy came, he thought, he did that 1 or 2 winters and thought, ugh, there's better ways to do this. And that's when we started doing the mechanical.
This is a picture of how they used to break the trail for the horses. So he would feed, but then he'd have to go out later in the afternoon and break the trail first in order for there to be room. Yeah.
Everything was pretty self-contained on the ranch as far as what we produced and what we ate. All of the hay was fed to the animals themselves. My mother always had a bunch of chickens, and I did not realize until about 2 years ago that she actually brought live chickens to town so that people like Deb's mom could butcher them and put them in her freezer. I don't know where I was for that story, but I remember picking a lot of chickens and swore I'd never have them again. He also did a lot of custom grain cutting for other people that had put wheat, barley, and oats in. And that's how they pretty much survived there, because not only did they have their little place there on the Elk River, but in the early 50s, they also bought property up on Elk Mountain, which more of you probably refer to as Sleeping Giant. But we have deeded ground up there that, thanks to their foresight and their willingness to stay in debt, and then they're also having a good banker, they were able to purchase, and we've been able to keep that as well. So he always had a cow-calf operation, which means mama cows raise the calves till mid-September, October, and then sell them. But in 1965-66, he switched over from a cow-calf to a yearling operation, which meant that in December or January, we would buy young calves and feed them out through the winter, and then put them on green grass, feed them the grass, and then in October, they would be shipped to the feedlots. Doc and I continued that same operation through the years until Troy and Adonna came, and Troy wanted to revert it back to the cow-calf operation. But so there's always continually been a bovine operation on the ranch, and we've used horses to do our gathering, all of that type of thing throughout the years. In 1973, Doc joined in on the operation, and that's when we became the Rocking Sea Bar. Till that point, it had always been just called Raymond and Alice's, the Gray Ranch. And the reason we chose the Rocking Sea, because Doc and I now had cattle of our own. Again, the yearling operation was, and there's the bigger ones there too. It is a C, bar, and a quarter circle. And so it's called Rocking Sea. These are the branding irons. Yeah, I don't know, they're kind of heavy and a little awkward. These are the branding irons that we used for all of the cattle that we brought on the place. Handmade, as were almost always all of the brands. And so you've got the Rocking, the C, bar, quarter circle is what makes it the Rocking Sea Bar. And so we've just kind of, and you're welcome to come up afterwards and feel the weight on these. We used at that time, we would use an open flame. These get red hot, and they were branded. And then you want to talk about your brands?
Yeah, and then, so when Troy and I moved onto the ranch, there was another brand. This was Doc and Marsha's, and my grandfather had a backward Z bar quarter circle, and it's a three iron is what they call it, because that has 3 irons, and my grandfather's was also 3 irons. And Troy and I petitioned with the state to try to get a shorter brand so that it was 2 iron, which means it just has 2 characters, because it originally was 2 irons that you would use. Now we went to an electric, but now ours is the backward Z 3/4 box. And so you can see there's only three parts of that box. And this is a smaller brand that we can use on our calves. If you put something like a 3 iron onto a baby calf, first of all, it'll look like a billboard instead of just on its hip. So we use this one, and it's much smaller. It's also electric, which means that we don't have to keep an open flame going and trying to keep that fire going while we're branding. So this one I will pass around. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these.
And the other little one that's going around with the Rocking Sea Bar, Nate, our son, and his wife Rachel now have that, and they don't have cattle operation, but they do have horses. And so she has had that one made to do a freeze brand on the horses. And then she also uses that as her business name, because she makes custom mohair cinches. That's what I'm looking for. So that brand is, although it's no longer used on cattle, is still part of the family.
2 minute warnings.
Okay, thank you. Doc and I raised our family, of course, out there in the Elk River Valley. I went to school at the Steamboat Schools. Nate and Adonna went to the Steamboat Schools, Leah and Levi also. And then Nate and Rachel have a little one who's 6 who goes to Sleeping Giant, and then they've also got a 2-year-old. And we've always felt our kids got a really good education here in the Steamboat School. We were very lucky. They've done well. I guess that our goal throughout the years has always been to maintain the quality of that ranch, that we were given a little piece of heaven by being allowed to live here all these years, and we're really glad that we've been able to improve it, to keep it going, and to be proud stewards of this ground. Years ago, I discovered that there was a real need to educate everyone in our community about the value of agriculture. That's how I got involved in hosting a lot of the workshops and opening up our place to invite people from all different walks of life to have these conversations. Unfortunately, Adonna decided that she also was interested in doing this. And then just a couple years ago, our granddaughter said, well, I want to help with this as well. And so I think last year we had 18 different groups out on our place that we just had these conversations. And I would like to encourage you that if you're a part of a social organization in Steamboat, or you have guests coming to town, you have just any kind of interest that you think you might want to bring a group out to actually see what a working cattle ranch is doing, how we're trying to hang on to it, and what the future of agriculture is in this valley, get in touch with us. And if we can work something out, our little show, Dog and Pony Show, would be glad to visit with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Adonna now and get the current history.
Okay, so my name is Adonna, and like every good rancher, there's a wife who works in town, and I am the market president of Alpine Banks in Routt County and in Summit counties. So I have a much more business background than Marsha, or the generation where I get to work. We all work off the ranch, but I feel like I'm putting a lot of time in, and it's because we live in a much more, this is no longer an agricultural community. This is a recreational and tourism spot. And so it's much more difficult to continue ag operations the way that it once was. Now, Troy and I have, Troy's my husband, and we've been together since we met at University of Wyoming. We both went to school there and then moved down here when Doc and Marsha allowed us to be a part of the ranch. And we've actually been participating since then. And we have an opportunity to become full owners and full managers in 2018. One of the things that I started when I got married was this book that Life is Too Serious to Be Taken Seriously. And it's just my way of writing down really fun things that have happened or that came along the way that I just never wanted to forget and I always wanted to remember. And it includes things that otherwise would have gone away. This one I would never have forgotten, but I look back and the entry says, "We have now taken over the ranch. The ranch has been transferred to the next generation. Yippee, gulp, yikes, oh my God." So it reminds me that it was really, really exciting, but it was a legacy, and that we are now the ones fully in charge. There's no one else to blame. When Doc and Marsha were in charge, it was very easy to blame them, and now they don't care if we blame them. So we became the fiscal agents in every sense of the word, but we're also responsible for the legacy. And a couple things that we know we have to get right, and one of them was raising kids. And one of the things that was taught to me growing up, and we told our kids right away, is that in this valley, at least where our ranch is, that there's 3 types of animals. And one is livestock, so the cows and the sheep And our horses are livestock, and they serve a purpose, and that purpose is to provide us a way of life and a means by which to support ourselves. We also use them for byproducts and for meat. And so we have livestock, and then we have wildlife, and we are also stewards of the wildlife. So all the elk and the deer and the sandhill cranes, the bears, everything on the ranch, that we are also stewards of our wildlife. We can't tame them. They are not domesticated. We are just allowing them the opportunity to continue their passage through. And then the other one are pets. And we have dogs and kitties. We've had a blind guinea pig, and horses. Some people consider them horses. We consider our horses pets. We consider them livestock because they are actively used on the ranch to help us do what we should. But it reminds me of a story that we were having this conversation. We were eating a lamb that we had raised through 4-H, and then we were eating it that night for dinner, and we were talking again about livestock versus wildlife versus pets. And Levi was only about 4 years. It was your pet, so it was 9, so he would have been 7. And it was not a pet, it was a livestock.
I thought it was a pet.
It was not a pet,
close.
it was a livestock. And I thought we were really clear about which was which. And then, and we also had a little puppy running around. Her name was Lola, and she was an adorable little border collie. And Levi called me the next day. Troy called me and said, "Your son has a very important question for you." And Levi gets on and he said, "Lola was bad today. Are we going to eat her?" So that night we had another conversation over steak. And so it reminds me that we have these things that we carry from generation to generation, but we got to remember to hit it home sometimes. And then these guys are really, really good about being on horseback, and they love to be on horseback. They are there constantly, and they're very good. But it also reminds me on the ranch that you do it yourself. You very rarely have the opportunity to ask for help, and you've got to figure out a way to do it without a lot of money. We are not running to town. We're certainly not running to Steamboat to get parts. If you have to go get something, it's usually in Craig, which is 45 miles away, and as Troy tells you, it costs $8.50 to get there and back. So you don't do that without thinking about it twice. But we also talk about, things are tough on the ranch, and there's a life cycle, and things come and go, and it's part of what happens there. And Leah had a little pony named Shamrock when she was a girl, and from a young age, all of our kids have been on horses. And we were moving cattle. One of the cows turned back on Shamrock, and the cow was as large as Shamrock.
No, it was much bigger than us.
It was just about as big as Shamrock, and Shamrock got very scared, and I'm sure it was a huge buck.
It was giant.
It launched Leah. Leah fell down, and it cried, and of course Nate, my brother, got off, and he said to her, he goes, "You're part of the club now." And so she had to answer. She asked, "What does that mean? What am part of the club?" And he said, "The one getting bucked off club." And she turned around to Troy, my husband, who is excellent on a horse. I mean, he's like man from Snowy River. And she goes, "When did you start that club?" And he was not impressed. But you knew that you were not going to be walking back to the house, that the only alternative was to get back on the horse. We did have to talk Shamrock into facing the cows and get her back. But and then the other part about this journey is that we're all learning how to dance, and Troy, my husband, works so hard. I mean, the guy just never stops working. But we've always tried to take some time to appreciate where we are and what we're doing and this landscape around us, because we know how blessed we are. And in our family, dancing has always been a lot of fun, and from a young age, we've all learned how to two-step. So as the kids were getting older, we have wooden floors in our house, and they were getting ready to join 4-H. We were teaching them how to two-step and how to country swing, and we were having a blast. And I thought we did a pretty good job. You guys both are fairly competent on your feet. Well, Levi joined livestock judging. And this is a 4-H program where you get up in front of, you judge animals by looking at them and their characteristics. Then you go in front of a judge and tell them your rankings. I want this animal this way, and then this one and this one, and you have to do it all by yourself. And he was doing it as a 9-year-old. It's actually a competition, and you went away. That evening they had a dance down in Gunnison, and then the next day they had a competition and they came home. And I said, well, how'd it go? Did you have a good time? And he goes, oh yeah, it was great. And I said, well, what was it? And he goes, I learned, he was there for an entire 2 days to do the livestock judging. He goes, I learned if you know how to dance, you'll never be lonely. Check. Yeah, I was like, that's awesome, right? Okay, good. So my point is that we are trying so hard to take time with our family and be a part of one another's lives, but enrich this so that everybody wants to be a part of it. Now, the raising the kids part is no doubt the hardest part of what we do on the ranch, but we have Doc and Marsha's help, and it truly is a joint effort. And we learn as much from the kids as they learn from us. One of the things that I did right away when we took over is, God bless Marsha, but I was not doing Excel spreadsheets anymore. And so I took it over and put it all into QuickBooks. We also got a program called Cattle Max, and it's just for livestock, and it is awesome, and it helps me keep track of exactly how many cows we have, when they're going to calve out, who the moms are and the sires, and then when I sold them and everything. And it's supposed to, like in Flatland, you can use it as an app. So in theory, this is how they sold me. Your husband, while he's out on the pasture, can type in what calf was just born. The reality is, I'm married to Troy, and he voice text me, cow 212 just had her cow. And so all day long at the bank, I'm getting beep, 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 beep with all these things that is going on in his life. But we don't have really good cell service either. So, but the other thing that I did right away, because I'm a banker and this is what I wanted to do, I was like, I'm doing a break-even analysis. We're not going to just run this like a nonprofit anymore. And then I did the break-even analysis. Troy and I worked really hard to get our herd to 200. The first year I realized our break-even analysis says we need 600. I was like, okay, that is never happening. And it's because we live in this community where our neighbor just sold his 86 acres a year and a half ago for $60,000 an acre. And so when you plug in those kind of numbers, and then you buy a tractor for $120,000. And so after I did that, I was like, okay, we're not going to get to 600 acres. Or 600 cows, because even if we could not get enough leased land. Our ranch is not large enough to support even the 200 cows that we have. So in addition to making some technical changes, we also had to increase the leases that we have and bring on some other properties. So we lease from the Mays, as you guys have probably heard that family name. And then we have all these little parcels all over. It's actually kind of comical how many leases we have to keep track of. But we have to put up hay for our animals, and so Troy is busy doing that right now. That production is much better than it has been in the last couple of years, so he is slightly happier. And then we have pasture. So everything moves out after we calve out in March and April. Then we turn them out to pasture at the end of May, and they're out there, and they will go to summer pasture where our baby calves are expected to put on anywhere between 2.5 and 4 pounds of gain every single day. And then we'll bring them back in October. We actually just sold our baby calves on a forward contract. We did that last week in a Superior Livestock video auction. And so they come out, they take video of our animals, and then they put it up on a big screen, and people from all over the United States bid. And so we sold, and I'm happy to say prices were very, very good, and we'll ship them out in October. Also, while those animals are up there, all the cows are getting bred again. So we have one bull to every 15 to 20 cows, and they have 6 weeks to get their business done. And we are up there often, and when I say we, I mean Leah and Levi and Troy, often to make sure that those bulls are in good health and that they are not fighting with the other bulls, but they're actually paying attention to the cows because they have one job and they cannot screw it up. Because if they do screw it up and the cows do not get bred, they get shipped at the same time the baby calves do, because it is very expensive and very hard here to winter out a cow. So we go ahead and just put them on a truck, and they will go to another ranch. We'll sell them to another rancher that is not looking for bred cows. So, and then the other thing that Troy has taken on is a lot of contracts or corrals. He's a certified welder, so he's done a lot of capital improvements to try to get the place working well, that he can do it by himself. We were really lucky that my dad was able to help for a long time, and my grandfather was even around until he was in his 90s. But Troy now has to be able to feed all the cows in the morning by himself, and then work the cows pretty much by himself because the kids were in school. So he's been working and working. We also, I want to pass around, we have a lot of groups that come out and visit us, and one of the fun ones that we do every year are the 3rd grade classes from Sleeping Giant. And I'm going to pass these around because they spend an entire day field trip with us, and they are a blast. But one of the things I talked about is livestock, pets, wildlife, but I also really pound into their head the differences between a cow and a bull. And when you are out looking around, they're not all cows. So you need to, and I am very technical, as we have been with the kids ever since they were born. We talk about their body parts, and I do not, cut any corners with it. So we are very clear. A cow is a female, a bull is a male. Together they come and they procreate, and a cow will be pregnant for 9 months. And then during that gestation at the end, 9 months, she will give birth to a calf. If the calf is a male, it'll be a bull calf until such time it is castrated, and then it becomes a steer. If it is a female, then it's called a heifer calf. And it's called a heifer calf until she gets knocked up herself, and after she gives birth, then she's a cow. So it's a heifer until it's a cow. And so, and the whole time the kids are with us, I mean, I'm always like quizzing them, I'm making sure that they understand, tell them, leave a gate the way you found it. If it's closed, you leave it closed. If it's open. Okay, so the whole day, we get at the very end of the day, and I take them on another little tour, and I said, okay, I'm gonna quiz you guys. I want you to tell me, what is this animal? And that's a cow, and how can you tell it? Because it has teats, and it's got a baby calf on it. And then we go over to look at the next pasture, and I said, what's this? And the little kid's like, Mimi, and I said, yeah, and he goes, it's a bull. And I said, how can you tell? And he goes, because he has the biggest nutsack I've ever seen. And I was like, take that up to your mom. I can't wait to hear what she says. I know. So I'm just trying to do my part. Everyone's just trying to do their part for agriculture. So, yes. So that's the current state of affairs. As you can tell, we have a lot of fun, but there's a lot of work to be done. So now I'm going to turn it over to my dear daughter, Leah. Dear daughter.
Well, I'm going to introduce myself real quick, and then can we play that video for us?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Leah, and I've been hiding in the corner.
Real loud.
Real loud? Okay. Grandpa, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
He can
Okay.
never hear you.
That's why it's a trick. My name is Leah, and I am the granddaughter of my wonderful grandma Marsha and the daughter of Adonna. And I have the most amazing role models I could ever ask for, and another one sitting in the back. So thank you all for joining today. We're going to play a video that was actually just made this year. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to see it. The Steamboat Springs Ski Resort did a short clip on my brother and I and our part in agriculture in Steamboat. And
sorry.
No worries. Technology is not our friend all the time.
Keep talking.
Okay, so this video, it's really fun, and it shows both my brother and I. Unfortunately, he's working today and did not have the time to take off. He's out working and probably getting a sunburn and enjoying the day out. Okay. So this summer I've been working in town while working for my dad. I work for my dad during the day as much as I can. I get up, I do chores, which even though I'm out of 4-H, I somehow still have those. I get to feed my little baby horse in the morning. Then I get to help my dad by checking cows, riding horses, hauling bulls if he needs, whatever he asks. Then I usually make lunch for all of the hired guys, and then I head into town to work at a restaurant, Primrose, right here in town. And I get to work all evening, get to talk to people, get to see some friendly faces, get to meet new people coming into town just for the weekend, which has been a blast. Unfortunately, I think I counted 25-ish days until I go back to college. I'm not quite ready to go back, but it'll be fun. I'm at the University of Wyoming up in Laramie. I'm studying agriculture communications. I decided to do that because I grew up on a cattle ranch, and turns out it was my passion. My mom and grandma always told me to find my passion, to go after my drive, and that's what it was. I decided to study agriculture communications because I wanted to help bridge the gap between the public and producers, a lot like my wonderful role models have done. I wanted to help be part of the solution of agriculture, not the problem.
Well, I don't know. Sorry. It worked on my test drive.
No worries, we can scrap it if it doesn't work out.
You're doing great.
If you find it, we can find
I'll give you
it.
the thumbs up.
Sounds good. Alright. So I was very fortunate that I got to grow up here in Steamboat. It's an amazing community, lots and lots of people that are always supportive of me. I can walk downtown and know more people than I don't know. And even in school, I got to be taught by some of my 4-H leaders, were some of my teachers. And one of the most special things about growing up here in Steamboat was that I got to grow up on a cattle ranch. I got to grow up with my role models teaching me how to do everything. I got to grow up with lots of animals and learning many, many lessons. I got to learn how to care for animals, that my animals always came first. If I hadn't fed my animals their breakfast, their chores, hadn't done chores, then I wasn't gonna eat breakfast. Our animals always came first. Another thing I've always learned was responsibility and to stick to my word. If I told my brother I was gonna go feed this animal, I was gonna go feed that animal. There was no doubt about it. Whatever I told someone I was gonna do, I needed to make sure it was done. We have this thing we call Sunday Fun Days at our house, which, as you can tell, my mom's laughing because sometimes these fun day jobs aren't truly the most fun. Our fun day jobs have often included picking up rocks, shoveling different corrals, moving animals around, and we usually end up smelling, and sometimes we're talking by the end of the evenings. But I remember this one time we did it. It was Sunday Fun Day, rock picking up. Okay, we were all getting super excited. My brother and I, we're gonna make this the best Sunday Fun Day ever. We grabbed the speaker, we grabbed a bunch of different gloves. We were like, we're gonna grab a new pair of gloves because this is gonna be fun. Turn our speaker way up. My brother and I are off in our own little gator. My mom and dad are off in their own. My brother and I are jamming out, having a blast, and all of a sudden our mom and dad come up around us. They're like, have you even picked up any rocks? We've gotten a good handful. We looked in their little rig. They had it piled high, and we had to go help them do their own thing. And then they left for an hour and went and had lunch before us. And Levi and I keep picking up
Our
rocks.
work was done. You hadn't even gotten done.
Our fun day was just beginning. With that being said, I would never trade any of it for the world. I loved growing up on a ranch. My parents have always expected Levi and I to work on the ranch with our chores, with our day-to-day checking cattle, with feeding cows. It was always expected Levi and I were there to help. It was not expected for us to take over the ranch. We were always told to go out and find our own drive. We had to join many different clubs in town. We had to be part of different sports, experience many different things around town, try to meet more people, see what our passions truly were. My passion turns out to be agriculture. I love representing the beef industry, and I love getting to be around cattle and horses, and that is what I'd like to do with the rest of my life. With that being said, I am now up at college studying agriculture, and I'm loving it. And I want to come back, and I want to be back in Steamboat, but it's only if I'm on the family ranch. And I'm going to work every day to make sure that happens. I would like to continue to be part of the future of cattle ranching. I want to continue to have a cattle herd here. I want to continue to be able to check all of our cattle on horseback, to continue to have horses, and run this ranch with my brother. We say that we are land stewards, and that's truly what we are. I have gotten to see quite a bit of land development just while growing up here. I believe that we need to be land stewards. We need to continue to keep the grass growing and our native lands healthy and not very many. We don't want any weeds in our lands. We don't want our grasses to go dry and not to produce anything. So we're definitely land stewards. Another thing that I get to look at a lot is our land development. Steamboat is continuing to grow. There are so many people coming into town, and it is amazing to see how popular Steamboat is because it is a gorgeous town to be. But with that, there are tons of people on our county roads. There are lots and lots of bikers joining us on our roads, and we always say share the roads, but sometimes we want our cattle to go first. And we've had a couple incidents with bikers and cattle running into each other. Every once in a while our cows will get out and you'll get a call from someone biking the path saying, hey, I think your cow's out, and you have to say, okay, we'll go check him out. We go check, see if it's our cow. Sometimes it's our cow, sometimes we'll put it back in. Other times it's the neighbor's cow, and we call up the neighbor and off they go to do their own little thing. One fall, actually 2 years ago, we were moving all of our cows, all of the pairs. There was about 180 pairs of cows. We were driving down the road, down the county road.
Cattle drive.
A cattle drive. And we had heard there was going to be a bike race this weekend.
You might have heard about the Steamboat gravel race.
Okay, so this race we knew was going to be on Saturday. So we were like, okay, let's make sure we moved all the cows beforehand because they were out of grass and they were out of water. So we
On Friday.
So we've decided we're going to move on Friday. We were up at pasture, cows were gathered by 6 o'clock, and off we're going. Thank goodness Grandpa was ahead in the Ranger. We were going down the road and we come to an intersection. There are about 100 bikers right there at that intersection, and my grandpa waved his hands and said, stop, stop, we're coming down with some cattle. And we have an amazing picture that all of these cows are coming down the hill and we're turning with 100 bikers right there taking pictures of us. Oh my goodness, there's cows on the road. It was wonderful. It was quite the sight to see, and we left some surprises for those poor bikers. I thought this was a pretty fun story, and this year, actually this summer, I was working at the restaurant and someone was asking me what I do day to day and a funny story I had. So I'm telling him about this huge group of bikers, and I pulled up the picture and he pulls up a picture from the other end. I'm like, oh my goodness, twin opposite end pictures, which was really fun.
I got the thing working fine.
Perfect. All right, well then I will pass it over to the video for a second.
There's a light switch right there. Hey,
I don't think that was it. Oops. There we go.
So we've had this ranch, it's been in our family for 5 generations. It's ultimately cow-calf operations. We raise the calves all the way up through the summer, then we ship them out. So my great-great-grandpa, he moved out here from Nebraska.
They came out with a huge family and settled right down here. So that was all during the Great Depression, and we're very, very lucky that this is the place they chose. So we get up really close to sunrise, so it's early in the morning, and we get up and we go do our chores, which consists of feeding the cows, feeding our forage steers, and feeding all the horses. Once everybody's fed, we usually hop on a horse and we go check cows, go make sure everything's good.
I'm not one that can kind of sit around or, and just wait for something to get done, or like, I gotta go out and do it, make sure I have a productive day. You go out there, you gotta get the job done one way or another. It could be a blizzard or it could just be a bluebird day. No one's here to kind of pat you on the back or, say good job. I just remember someone asking me the other day, like, what do you do for fun around here after dark and stuff? And I'm like, I'm sleeping.
Every time we're out doing something around the ranch, he gets it done very quickly, very fast, and he's always prepared.
She always takes the initiative. She never really asks someone for, like, does this need done? Or no, she knows that it already needs to be done. She's already doing it. And so she's just wonderful. So any time at saddle's not a wasted minute, I think. Not everybody gets to stay out here and do the things that they love. And one, Steamboat's just a beautiful place to grow up. Just a little slice of heaven, it feels like.
end if you couldn't hear it in the back. You can come up afterwards and rewatch it.
Okay. All right. That's about the end of my speech right now. So now we'll bring everybody up and who was this one? Sorry, I forgot about that. Do you guys have any questions for us?
How many active ranches are now in functioning condition in Rock County?
Functioning condition.
Yeah, I mean, how many are working?
I think there's about 450.
Okay.
Cattle numbers have gone down, they've gone up, but they have managed to stay pretty consistent for about the last 35, 40 years. My economist friends always say that agriculture is not doing very well in Rock County, that we've really slipped in that role of the county's economy. And I like to point out to them that we've done pretty darn well maintaining that same balance with all the pressures that we have with development and not being able to find leases and the climate. This is a tough place to raise cattle. So yes, there's still active ranches. The good part, as Adonna alluded to, is that most of these ranches have outside jobs. All of us have been able to go to work in town and support this bad habit that we call ranching and still be able to maintain them. I think in all of Rock County there's only 1 or 2 places that the whole family is still working solely on the ranch and not involved in an outside job.
What has increased over the last 20 years is the number of acres and conservation easements. Routt County now has over 60,000 in conserved acres, and that is through mainly the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust, and they've got an office right down here on Main Street. But the idea behind that is with the help from the PDR, which is the purchase of development rights. If you guys own property in Routt County, then you pay a mill levy, and that mill levy is a partial tax that allows for the Routt County Board of County Commissioners help to buy a conservation easement on those properties that want to put it into perpetual open space. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question. I'm a real city person. So when you're telling me about this auction online for animals, how do you get them to where they're going then?
Right. So the auction is on video, but it's a forward contract. And so Superior Livestock is the auction house that we use. And part of the contract that we sign when we decide to go with them is that we will help arrange delivery. So it's a forward contract. Our animals have to be shipped out between October 5th and October 12th. And what's going to happen is we've got scales, weight scales on our ranch. So on the day that they will be shipped out, the brand inspector will come and look at all the animals to make sure they have the right brand on them, that we're not selling our neighbors. And so he'll look at the brand. They'll be run across the scales to see how much they're going to weigh. We forward contracted them, the baby cows, for 550 pounds. When they left, they were probably about 150 pounds, so they got put on 4 pounds a day. And if they don't actually weigh 550 pounds, then our price deducts by 12 cents per pound. So we have to, yeah, it's a gamble. But then after we weigh them, then they count them again and they ship them off, and they'll go by semi to the next ranch. Yeah.
If I could add a little bit of historical to that, it used to be that all the cattle from most of northwest Colorado, sometimes southern Wyoming, and sometimes eastern Utah were trailed in cattle drives to the depot. And that happened clear into the 70s, that people were trailing cattle into this depot to be shipped out on the trains. Very early on, the cattle that came from the high mountain areas became a wanted commodity with the cattle buyers, because they knew that they had raised good cattle, they had good meat and good fat put on them in a very short period of time. And they would know that they had come from particularly the Steamboat area, because they were using coal-fired trains. And as the trains went through the tunnels, that coal dust came back on all the animals' faces. And so when they went into the auction, which was a live auction ring, those buyers were looking for those cattle, and out of this area they would get a little bit higher premium. And then in the mid 70s, we lost our depot, and but we had the trucks, the semis that Adonna referred to, really became a much easier thing to handle because those trucks would back right up to your corrals and take those cattle to wherever they were supposed to go. And so that has been a real good thing for us.
And how many animals are you talking about that you moved in that time of year?
Oh, there's thousands. I don't know the numbers that go out of this valley, but there's thousands of head. You'll see cattle trucks for a long time.
What kind of cattle are they raising out of Angus or Herefords?
We've got all black Angus. Well, I should take that back. Levi, my son, is a big team roper. He has started raising his own Coriani, so the roping steers. So he's got about 20 of those boogers, but the rest are black Angus for us.
Molly?
Can you tell us a little bit about acquiring the brands and making the brands and the regulatory process for that?
Right. So in the state of Colorado, a brand is a means by which to identify your cows that is prescribed by law. If you have cattle, you have to have a brand, and it has to be on your animal. So you have to register your brand through the state of Colorado Brand Board. You would think it would be super easy. It is not at all, because they are not yet on the World Wide Web. And so they have a book that is about this thick, and they only update that book every 10 years. And so you have to, I'm not kidding you, it was such a pain. So we send them by mail. Can we please have, we think up in our head this brand, because it's not in the brand book, we send it by mail, and a month later it comes back, no, that brand doesn't exist, try again. And so it took us about 6 months to find a brand that would that's not already taken, and that the brand inspector thinks will actually show well on an animal, because sometimes they can blur or they get confused. And then after you get it approved, then they will send you the copy of what it should look like, and then you can either have your brands made, the electric brands, or the metal brands we always made. Yeah, and it's 5 years. You renew them every 5 years, and it's actually fairly cheap. A lot of people have complained because it's gone up over the years. It's about $120 now. It used to be, $30.
So
yeah.
What is the tag in the ear for?
That is. Go ahead.
That is another way to identify our animals. Each ranch identifies their animals a little bit differently. So we'd use ear tagging. On our ranch, we do different colors for each animal based off of the year they were born. And when calves are born, if they are male or female, they'll be put in different years. So that's one way to identify.
I'd like to add that Leah has really become Troy's right-hand person as far as keeping track of all these cattle and knowing which calf goes with which cow. Before she went off to college, she was out there, she and Levi both are out there helping calve all day long. But Leah can look at this black calf and tell you it's different than any other black calf. It's like a mystery to me. And I know he really missed her this spring because she was in college. And she's good.
Well, and they come running when they see Leah because she feeds them little treats. And so our cow herd is really docile. We don't keep a single animal on the ranch that is potentially dangerous because we wanted the kids to be comfortable and go out there.
And us old people too. Marty.
So, a calf is born on your ranch, so you're the first owner. How many owners does that calf that turns into an adult, have before they are served on my plate?
Do you want to take it? Do you want me to?
You can. I was going to say 1 to 3.
Yep. So you're right. We're the first, and then we sell them when they're 550, 600 pounds, and then they're going to go to a stalker. And so there's an example of a stalker in Steamboat. Christy and Matt Belton take those animals, not from us, but they would take the animals and they would feed them out usually through the winter and just put a little bit more weight on them. And then after that, they go to usually a feed yard. And a feed yard is where you can think of like Cargill or Montfort, and that's where they're going to be owned by usually a big corporation. And they're actually gonna, most of them are grain fed out. That's where they finish the animals. And then they usually get slaughtered at the feedlot and then on to the retailer.
So it's usually 5 or 6?
Well, it's 3 while they're live,
Okay.
And then the fourth is the retailer wherever they get shipped off for consumption.
Yes.
I have a question for Leah, who's studying communication. So you mentioned that your aim is to improve communication to the public about ranching. And I'm curious about the strategies that you discuss in university, and if there's any case studies from other industries. For example, I think of the TikTok influencer Tea Works, what she's done for beekeeping, that you look at and discuss and so forth.
That's a wonderful question, thank you. Well, I'm going to start with my biggest role models are my mom and grandma, and they've taught me so much about representing agriculture, and that the biggest thing we can do to help bridge the gap between the public and producers is education. So doing events like this and bringing people out to our ranch and showing them in person what we're doing and letting people be part of the conversation and ask questions and see things hands-on is a wonderful way to communicate with people. I think that social media has done amazing things to help people feel connected and get to learn more. So different TikTokers that bring people along with their daily chores and daily activities and how they do agriculture is a great idea. I really want to do something where I get to potentially do journalism or PR and get to talk to people. And so I'm only on my second year, well, I'm about to go into my second year at the University of Wyoming, and I'm hoping to learn more about that. And so far I've learned much about the media side of how to talk to people and how to get people's interest, and it's been really interesting.
Tell us about this, because that was a big deal.
Okay, I have a crown here in front of me. This is my 2021 Routt County Fair Queen crown. I was the 2021 Routt County Fair Queen, which meant I got to represent our local county fair, all of our 4-H members, our 4-H livestock, and our agriculture right here in Routt County across the state and into Wyoming, and kind of nationwide when you get to talk to social media. So, thank you.
Leah, you might want to explain your belt buckle.
Oh, okay. Another thing Mom told me I should talk about. Today I have a class belt buckle on. So mine is my 2022 Steamboat Springs High School class graduation buckle. It's tradition to do class rings. However, a couple of my friends and I decided we weren't ever going to wear class rings. Why not do something we'd wear? I wear a buckle all the time, so I wear a class buckle now. It has everything that represents me with our high school logo.
You guys started a trend. Then this year they did the same thing.
And now neighboring schools are doing it, and you're seeing it more everywhere. Thank you.